Stop with the questions. Celebrate.
And then they say, is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person. Yosemite's one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water.
Mike Lindell's a conspiracy.
Well, you haven't. Person, woman, man, camera, TV. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy, but for me it was easy.
Amazing.
He can't sit down. He's got a burning in his butthole. He's got a fire. He's got a flame coming out of his butthole.
Big, massive dumps.
Oh, I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism.
Somebody sent me a thing this morning where they're talking about putting the vaccine into salad dressing.
You see, this is a simple meme that you would find on the internet, but this meme is very real.
You ain't seen nothing yet until you see the flaming butthole.
Putting us on our knees to China.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
Beta male.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the show. Round the nation right here, Waldorf Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you today. It's a show. We're having a show today. It's going to be a good one too. Yes, there's a scandal surrounding Sam Seder, the Majority Report. Oh no. Oh shoot, and I actually don't have that sound clip too. That sucks. But anyway, lots of fun. We're going to have that. We have other stories as well. We have, of course, some MAGA copium going on still. We got social media sites that are flopping. My thoughts on that are a little bit more nuanced, but it should be very interesting. We got Fox News, Brian Kilmeade telling you, go back to work, while sitting in his nice little remote office. Fun times. And then we have an update on Jenna Ryan, the writer that is too white for prison, who went to prison. Lots of fun. Lots of fun. So please like and share the stream if you haven't already. We're going to have some fun. We're going to do these stories. And so please, again, like and share. Very, very important that you do so. All right. With that said, let's jump into it. With a big old dose of copium. All right. It's almost been a year since the January 6th Capitol insurrection. And since then, Trump supporters have gone through a very interesting transition. First, they started out being incredibly enthusiastic about it, and now they're at the point of where, did that actually happen? I mean, maybe it happened, and maybe it was the FBI, or maybe it was Antifa, but it certainly wasn't us. No. So now, Donnie O'Sullivan, he's a reporter for CNN. He goes out there and he talks to Trump supporters, and he basically asked them, he's like, hey, January 6th, what do you think, right? Who did it? Who did it? Well, here are some of the answers.
I think the whole reporting of it is a giant hoax. We are very peaceful people. So it was a total setup. To me, it was the FBI had set it up. I don't believe that they were Trump supporters that did that.
You said the whole thing's a setup. You don't really believe that, do you?
I do. Because Trump won the election.
They've proven it over and over again.
I think that it was set up, and I think that people didn't know what was happening, and I think that they went in there and they were caught in a trap, if you will.
You're suggesting that January 6th was a setup?
Yes, I am. Mm-hmm.
But you would acknowledge there was a lot of Trump supporters involved in the violence that day.
I didn't see any Trump supporters in the violence. I saw people that pretended to be Trump supporters.
I really don't think Trump had much to do with it than people that were supporters for him. Some were involved, but I think they were enticed by the FBI and by undercover agents.
It was the Democrats were behind it all. They're the ones that caused it all.
Do you really believe that?
I know it. And there is no way that a Republican would act that way. And there is no way that Trump had anything to do with what happened on January 6th.
But what about all the Trump supporters that have been charged and indicted?
Because it's all Democratic judges and people that were on the take from the Democrats.
Tell me you're in a cult without telling me you're in a cult. That's what cope looks like, folks. Holy shit. Wow. Pure, unmitigated copium. Again, this was like a couple weeks ago that they went out and interviewed these people. But no, and by the way, this is the kind of propaganda that you would find on none other than right-wing media. For example, Fox News. Fox News made a whole documentary claiming that, guess what? It was the FBI who, planned this. Yes, FBI agents went and incited the crowd to then go do this thing for Donald Trump. And then they said, aha, got him. We got him. You got what? You got nothing. Again, he did a whole documentary about this, and he cites as his evidence of some January 6 suspects that mention unindicted co-conspirators. Now, I know that sounds like super scary, but in legal terms, it basically just refers to suspects who haven't been charged yet. There's not evidence of undercover agents or informants. It's just people who are literally unindicted co-conspirators. I mean, it really is just amazing how, and by the way, this is Schrodinger's Democrat when you think about it. I mean, on the one hand, Democrats, they're the most hideous, insidious schemers in the world, and yet also can't run the government. That make any sense to you? Wait, if you're insidious planners and schemers, and you're able to do all these things, then why also do they suck at running government? Again, Schrodinger's Democrat. Can't do anything right except for somehow plan everything against the Republicans and make them fail every single time. Again, none of this makes any sense, but it's all copium. It's all copium. They're getting high on their own supply. Now, Carlson, going back to his, claims about the FBI, he says, in potentially every single case, the unindicted co-conspirators were FBI operatives. But there's no evidence of that. None at all. None. And by the way, this goes further. Laura Ingraham said on her show that it was Antifa. Now, this was on January 6th. She said, there were likely not all Trump supporters, and there are some reports that Antifa sympathizers may have been sprinkled throughout the crowd. Senator Ron Johnson, and this goes beyond Fox News and even congressmen. Here's what Ron Johnson said. By and large, it was a peaceful protest, except for there were a number of people, basically agitators, that whipped the crowd and breached the Capitol. Representative Andrew Clyde, who was literally in the building when this had happened, said, oh no, these were just tourists. That's it. It's just tourists. Normal tourist visit. Really, was it? Again, that's in opposition to video showing Clyde barricading the house doors when he was inside to try to keep them out. Why are you trying to keep out the visitors, the tourists? If they're just tourists, why were you so afraid of them getting their hands on you? And so, again, that's the ironic about face that we have seen from not only congressmen, again, who were there, who feared for their own lives. These are Republican congressmen. But again, rioters that claim that it was, it's the Democrats, it's Antifa, it's the FBI, it's them, whoever they are, and all of that. When originally, on January 6th, a lot of the Trump supporters were saying stuff like this.
Are you proud of what happened here today?
Absolutely. I think we should have gone on in and yanked our senators out by the hair of the head and drug them out and said, no more.
I'm absolutely stand behind 100% what happened here today. 1,000%. I think it's terrible how this election was stolen.
That's interesting. No, they know. They know it's all bullshit. They know that it was Trump supporters. Now, I'm not saying all Trump supporters did this or support this, but a lot of them did. A good chunk of them did. And those ones, they're embarrassed. And by the way, the only sense of embarrassment that they feel is the sense of embarrassment that they failed. They were not successful. This is cope. It's all cope. Now, you remember the last part of the first video that I showed you, that's Lisa, right? Her response, what? Well, of course I know that it was Democrats. She was so openly aghast that anyone could say that a Republican would actually do something violent like that. Like literally offended by the notion that any Trump supporter would be involved in this at all. I got news for you. There's a decent chunk of right-wingers that are violent. Right-wing groups, for example, are the leading perpetrators of domestic terrorist extremism. That's it. They've killed more people in the United States than jihadists since 9/11. And about a third of Republicans have openly agreed with the statement that violence may be necessary to, in their words, save the country. Or, I guess in reality, turn it into a right-wing dystopian hellscape. That same percentage of Americans overall believe that violence against the government is sometimes justified. Now, that's not good when you have a police state filled with heavy weaponry. That's going to be a lot of death. And a gigantic government crackdown on actual freedoms. So that's not a good thing. Now, that said, there's one bright spot in this video that I'm going to show you. One person, one Trump supporter that was interviewed actually does see the reality and admitted it. Take a look.
What do you think of the Trump supporters that stormed the Capitol?
Oh, my. You talk about misfound feelings. Seeing the folks from my side of the state that were there, and they're not the part of the campaign that we would like to have.
Do you think some Trump supporters that say it's Antifa, it's Black Lives Matter, that they know that that's bullshit, but they just don't want to admit it's easier to blame someone else?
Everyone is afraid to, take the blame. It's that simple.
All right. Finally, that's what we're asking for here. Someone who actually sees the reality. Now, in this case, I don't care that she supports Donald Trump. I really don't. I really don't. I disagree with her political positions, greatly so. But at this point, it feels like I have to commend her for actually seeing the reality and is willing to say that, yeah, but they were wrong for what they did. And that, yes, they don't want to admit blame, or they don't want to admit fault or take any sort of blame. And that's not the kind of movement that we want. Now, the only thing that I can say in response to that really is that, look, hey, it may not be what you wanted personally, but it is what Donald Trump and a lot of his supporters did. And we're finding that out as the J6 Commission, the investigation continues. That's just a fact. All right. Moving on. Ever since social media, for example, Twitter and Facebook, purged former President Donald Trump after stoking violence on January 6th, his entire circle of followers have been trying to desperately cash in on the idea that they're being censored by big tech. Now, as a result of that, they have used that notion not only to ensure that, in some cases, free speech, in their opinion, is upheld, but again, they've been cashing in. That's why you have different social media sites, Rumble, Gitter, True Social, Frank Speech, Telegram, Gab, and a myriad of other scuffed, not really quite launched, or soft launched, or poorly launched social media knockoffs of Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Now, there's nothing wrong with competition. I think that we actually need more competition in the market. In fact, there's some pretty big issues surrounding media consolidation and big tech. I mean, for example, one of the issues that we see here on YouTube, for example, is algorithms that suppress independent news, independent media in favor of legacy outlets. And they're doing that not because of the content. So, for example, if they were, going after content like Alex Jones, conspiracy stuff, like Sandy Hook stuff, right? And saying, okay, you can't monetize on that, or we're going to limit your reach on that. Okay, I get the meaning behind that, right? But see, what they've actually done with their algorithms is, like I said, suppress independent media while boosting up legacy media, which includes one of the biggest purveyors of disinformation, Fox News. And so you can't really argue that they're doing so because of the content, but because of course, more of a monetary incentive from advertisers and a support for legacy television media. And again, those are authoritative sources, Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC. They're not suppressed at all. Now, I say that, I talk about that, but that's actually not what this story's about. It's actually of the result that's happening on the right. In fact, right-wingers are now fighting over a smaller and smaller audience as a result of some of these social media purges. In fact, here's reporter Ben Collins, who tracks online extremism, explaining to Joe Scarborough. Take a look.
The kids need to be in school. The parents need to be teaching in school. The
Not
mayor's
the right one. Hold on a second here. Let me fix my video real quick, because that.
What do you think of the
not
Trump
the right
supporters
one.
that stormed the Capitol?
So hold on for a second.
Yeah,
There we go.
the gravy train is off the rails, right? That's what's really going on here. Is over the last year, these people have been banned from traditional social media places, Facebook and Twitter, and all of those people providing donations in those spaces because they had so many eyeballs in those spaces. They were, gaming the algorithms in those spaces. Because of that, you're just not getting as much income, just straight up not happening in that space. In the process, they've tried to create this parallel internet, the parallel infrastructure to, I guess, create a second version of this internet. So that's how you have Rumble, and that's how you have Getter, and that's how you have Gab. And that's why you have people going to Telegram. But it doesn't work the same. Not everybody is moving over. You're not accidentally coming across these people's posts like you were in the days before the 2020 election. That's really affected their income.
All right, so there's a few interesting points there that he brings up. So one of them is about reach. Twitter's massive. There's lots of people there. Facebook's massive. Lots of people there. YouTube, etc. You know where I'm going with this, right? So now the result is nobody is going to the fringe sites because they're already on the gigantic sites. The only ones who are going to those, to the Getters and you know, the Gabs and the Telegrams, are people who are already banned from the other sites. Generally people who are on the far right. And so they go there and they see, what do they see? They see an echo chamber of basically the content that they already agree with on those sites, which ranges in, you know, from anti-vaccine content to straight up racism and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. They're not getting new eyeballs, which they rely on for recruitment and bringing people down the alt-right pipeline. So now the issue, of course, is for them, why go there if we're not actually recruiting people? So now that's the issue, right? Now, as some of you point out in the comments already, these places are filled with Nazis. I mean, again, those are the people that are already banned from all the major social media. So normal people, normies, they're not going there. Even some of the more politically engaged normal people aren't going to those sites. No, they're going to Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube to some extent. And they're getting some of the content from, as I mentioned, more of the authoritative sources, right? So now these websites, they're struggling. And of course, not only are they filled with Nazis, which nobody wants to interact with, but they're also poorly optimized, they're unstable, and they're also not really known for keeping your data safe, right? Protecting it from thieves. Now that said, I'm not saying that the big sites haven't had their own data leaks. They had some very famous ones. I'm also not saying that they don't sell your data to third-party advertisers, which in some cases they absolutely do. But again, the big reason that nobody is on these sites is because no one wants to go there because of all of these different reasons. And so think about it this way. The only reason you're on these sites is when you've been kicked out by Twitter. It's like getting kicked out of the public pool for peeing in it. And so what do you have to do? You still want to go to the pool, right? Well, now, instead of going to the public pool, you're going to be stuck in the little inflatable pool at your buddy's house. And that's it. That's pretty much it. And so you're not going to get that same experience. You're not going to get the reach that you had. And so it gets kind of boring for people, honestly, because they turn into echo chambers filled with a tiny amount of sycophants. And that's why, honestly, that's why Donald Trump was so desperate to get back on Twitter and on Facebook. And understand, too, that the amount of reach that he lost as a result of this ban was enormous and enormously damaging for both his brand and his political aspirations into the future. He could not reach new people, new eyeballs, and that's what a lot of these right-wing content creators who have also been deplatformed are dealing with as well. Most of these big companies are not going to advertise on these smaller fringe sites. And so that also dries up a stream of revenue for these content creators who have decided to, or have no choice, but to be on these other platforms, which means they lose money. Because again, you can get a crazy amount of money from advertising on Facebook and YouTube, but not on these other sites, which again are used to sustain some of these right-wing independent media outlets and these content creators or these influencers, okay? And so, of course, that means it's less incentive for these people and for people who are not quite kicked off of these platforms, some of the bigger names, to post their content on these fringe sites. Less content means less people going to these sites to see the content, unless, of course, as I mentioned, if they're banned. So that's why, in large part, why these sites are going to fail. They're already failing. They're already doing incredibly badly. And so they're just not reaching people the way that they could before. And again, I can personally attest to just my experience on YouTube and the experience, of course, of other content creators here on the left. David Dole, I believe, put out a great video talking about some of the algorithm changes and the effects that it's had on his channel in reaching new people. For the year, he gained 0 net subscribers. That's it. Because that reach has been limited. And so the reach, and this is just from being artificially through the algorithm limited, throttled, and not so much for being banned. And so being banned, obviously, far worse because now you're not getting any new eyeballs. And so that's pretty devastating. The only reason, or I should say the only way that you can really now grow a following on YouTube is word of mouth. And so that's an issue. Now, what can you see? Like, what can you actually learn from this? Well, number one, whether you agree with it or not, it's a fact that deplatforming works to reduce people's reach. It's simple as that. You deplatformed Donald Trump, Facebook and Twitter did. Well, guess what? Donald Trump doesn't have the reach that he did before. Simple as that. And so, yes, deplatforming works, but there is also a discussion here about censorship that I think is fairly legitimate, and how, of course, that can lead to censoring independent voices who are not spreading conspiracy theories, but might also challenge some of the more official narratives. Now, that said, is the far right more impacted by deplatforming? It really depends. It depends on the type of content. Tim Pool, for example, not really affected by deplatforming because he hasn't been deplatformed. Again, very right-wing content creator, but he has managed to stay within the content guidelines, despite, of course, calling, or maybe not calling for, but definitely talking constantly about there's a civil war coming, civil war, civil war, civil war. It's coming, it's coming. There's going to be a civil war. People are going to take up arms, blah, blah, blah. And so that does, of course, push violent rhetoric. And so, yes, people like Tim Pool, not affected. People like Alex Jones, very affected. And then, of course, you have everybody in the middle. And I should say, let me give out the context for what I mean by the middle. I don't mean like centrist politically or in the middle politically, but between like smaller channels and much larger channels, you have a lot of people who are in between that are also getting hit by these algorithm changes. That's very unintentional. And so that's what we have going on here on just YouTube as a result of this, these algorithm changes. But again, deplatforming, yes, has had some pretty bad unintended effects, but also you can look at some of the positive effects as well. For example, again, not seeing stuff from Alex Jones or some of these other Nick Fuentes and some of these very incredibly toxic right-wing, channels. And so there's definite positives and definite negatives here. And I think, there needs to be a good nuanced discussion on where you draw that line. That said, the far right, they're feuding amongst themselves as a result of this. They're not having this conversation. They're not talking about, oh, gee, how do we curate our content so that we don't run afoul of some of these rules and we can continue to reach new people. No, they've been kicked out for spreading nonsense conspiracy theories and just straight up anti-Semitism and all this, just disgusting rhetoric. And now they're like, well, obviously it's because that other right-wing content creator, well, it's because they're CIA. Wait, what? And so they're all going at each other and feuding amongst themselves. Again, Lynn Wood, Michael Flynn, they're going after each other. I've talked about that. Marjorie Taylor Greene just got banned from Twitter. Dan Crenshaw, they're going after each other. The Pillow Guy and essentially everybody. And everybody's laughing at him at this point. And so, that's what's going on here. And they're fighting on these platforms for scraps. That is one positive effect of deplatforming, to be fair. Now, that said, I think we need to treat have these social media networks treat everyone fairly. I think we do need to have robust conversations between both sides that are in good faith, debates even ones, by the way, especially ones that do challenge some authority, but in a way that doesn't lead to rampant conspiracy theories that end up harming people. It's a pretty difficult line to walk here. And as one, I think we can all agree that this is not a line that a for-profit CEO should ever have been able to walk. And so I don't know what the future of social media is going to look like, or what it even should look like, and how much of a balance we need to have between being able to have free expression and also clamping down on conspiracy theories. And so it is a conversation that needs to happen, and I just don't see it happening in really any place. All right. All right. So moving on. All right. I had my videos mixed up. But now I got the right one. Fox host Brian Kilmeade wants you to go back to work, even if it kills you.
The kids need to be in school. The parents need to be teaching in school. The mayor's saying get into school. The governors are saying get into school. The president's saying get into school. Dr. Fauci said get to school. They're the only thing stopping. These kids are going to have their learning curve forever curtailed unless something happens quickly. And this should be our mantra from here on in. Let's not get caught up in the daily nuances of what doctor's in and what's out. It's called live with it. Go to work, live with it. Go to get on a train, get on a bus, get on a plane. How do we live with it? We can no longer hide from it.
Says the guy hiding in his home studio. I'm just saying. I wonder if he'd have a different tune, if he were working shoulder to shoulder with another person in a poultry plant for, just a little bit more than minimum wage. I wonder if he would be a little bit different. Gee, I don't know. But look, this is Fox News. Totally mask off, as usual. And let me tell you the reality about this, okay? So this is the message that we're getting, as he points out, yes, from the president, from, Dr. Fauci, from all of these officials who basically want to push everyone back to work. That's generally the whole purpose, the whole narrative that they're doing on COVID. Get people back to work, go back to work, go back to work. Now, the whole point of pushing the kids back to school is to get people to go back to work to make profit for the bosses. Now, this is as Omicron. Look, we've hit over 1 million cases. We're like in a day, record number of cases. So you're going to tell me in the midst of all of this that the correct thing is to send everyone back to school and everyone back to work before this surge has even ended? No, that's ridiculous. And by the way, we're not safer here. All right? You have record numbers of children that are being hospitalized due to Omicron. Now, thankfully, children are less likely to die from COVID, but they're still getting sick, they're still going to the hospital, and yes, some are still dying. And even failing that, children are a vector for COVID, which impacts people who are immunocompromised. And again, vaccinated people were able to get COVID, were able to spread COVID. Now that said, vaccinated people, when a breakthrough infection happens, we're way less likely to go to the hospital. to have serious or severe symptoms. All right. And so that said, you get COVID, you still have to isolate. You still have to stay home. And so I don't know what they believe they're going to accomplish by forcing everyone back to work, back into the office during this Omicron surge, especially when they're going to get sick and have to stay home. And what they're doing, honestly, and we all know the answer to it, is that they're playing survival of the fittest. You know what? We're done. We're just going to send everybody back to work. If they die, they die. Now, that said, they always tried to push this throughout the entirety of the pandemic, and even back before we had a vaccine. Now, thankfully, we do have a vaccine, and that does change the game. Now, the thing is, yes, the vaccine is effective, but only if you take it. Not everybody is doing so. You have Republicans that have refused to take it. And now, here's the thing. I know I'm going to upset everybody when I say this, but I don't want Republicans to die. A shocker, right? Oh, no. And here's the thing. They might want to, but I don't want them to. I don't want them to get COVID. I don't want them to die. I really wish they felt the same thing about us, and didn't want us to die. But hey, unlike some of them, I actually care about life. I actually care about life that's already been born into this world. It must be because of my bleeding heart. I know. What a terrible person I am to not want Republicans to die. But again, the people who are continuously pushing people to go back to work, they don't care if you live or die. They've got money to make. And it's all about the money. It's all about corporate profits. It's also, by the way, a little bit about control. When you're in the office, when you're in the workplace, you're much easier to control, right? They can tell you what to do. They can tell you when to go to the bathroom, when to get a snack, when to eat, how much productivity you get to have. And by the way, in the jobs where you're able to work from home, and I understand that there's a lot of jobs where you can't, but if you're working from home and you're still getting the same amount of work done and being as productive, then I don't see why you shouldn't be able to stay home. Why be forced to come back into the office? And of course, the reason is, as I mentioned before, this is about control. It's about trying to control people and, curtailing efforts for you to, I don't know, be human and not just look busy or act busy to look busy for the boss. It's part of the whole weirdo work culture that we have in this country, where even if you're not really busy, you still got to look busy. And even if you're super productive, if you take a break, well, yeah, you can't do that. You're not being productive, but I got all my work done. Well, then they just want to pile more work onto you. And that's what they do. And so understand, too, that this control extends into, if you keep people busy enough, they don't think about their conditions. Now, I say that because what happened during this pandemic? A lot of things have happened. For one, people got stimulus checks from the government, and it turned out to be incredibly popular. I know, right? And in fact, you have a petition for more stimulus checks that has reached over 1 million signers. A very, very popular position. Now, they also discovered that the government is able to give you free medicine in the form of a vaccine. And they're starting to think, well, wait a minute, if you can do that for that, why can't you do that for insulin? They found out that the government can actually help you, for example, by delaying your student loan payments or delaying your rent payments, keeping you in a home. Wait a minute, they could do that? I didn't have to pay rent. I didn't have to pay for my student loans. Now, some people still made the choice to be able to pay those student loans in order to, take advantage of the 0% interest rate and all of that. But they realized that, it's almost as if the government can actually do things that will help us. Now, why don't they do this kind of stuff more often? Because we're struggling. Now, they also realized in this pandemic that their bosses generally don't give a shit about them, and that they exploited them, and that the workers who were working 2 to 3 uniquely American jobs were too busy to notice, too wrapped up in having to survive to actually notice what's going on, that they were being exploited by their bosses. In fact, an NBC News pointed out that low-wage workers had suffered disproportionately during the pandemic and began demanding improvements in the form of higher wages, meal and rest breaks, better benefits, and shorter shifts. And added that the pandemic served as a wake-up call of sorts for them by exacerbating existing issues and highlighting the fact that their work could literally pose a threat to their lives. Remember when we called them essential workers? People at the grocery stores? Remember when there was a very, very short window of time where they were getting hazard pay? In some cases, when they were getting extra pay, because, they had to deal with some of the worst customers, the anti-maskers that would come in, that would bully them, that would threaten them. And remember when they still had to work while people that usually were higher paying got to go home, got to stay home and not do anything and still get paid for it, unemployment benefits. But hey, you're an essential employee. You're working at the grocery store. You're working at the gas station. You're working and you're keeping the very basic functions of society alive, and yet received absolutely nothing for it. The hazard pay was ephemeral, gone. The pandemic's still here, but where's the pandemic pay? It's gone. It's gone. Just like the unemployment benefits are gone, just like the stimulus checks were long, long gone. And so people realize, hey, I'm not being treated fairly here. I'm being treated very, very poorly. And so I demand better treatment for working, for putting my life in danger. And when that didn't happen, they quit their jobs. They quit their jobs en masse. The Great Resignation, they call it. And others didn't quit their jobs, but they decided to go and stage labor strikes. Kellogg's, John Deere, Kaiser Permanente, coal miners in Appalachia that were represented by the United Mine Workers of America, striking for better pay, better benefits. And there were many others. And others who are not unionized, pushed for unionization. Activision Blizzard employees, Amazon warehouse workers, not only in Bessemer, Alabama, which ultimately failed, but now will be redone because the company was found to have interfered in the process. But also Amazon workers, warehouse workers in New Jersey. And so, you also have Starbucks employees. One in New York, Buffalo, had successfully unionized their store. And there are other examples of workers that are finally able to push back. Now, all of this has scared the piss out of the owner-donor class. People that Brian Kilmeade represents, the people that are telling you, just deal with it, get on a train and go back to work. And that's why, first, they got their goons in Congress to rip away that extended unemployment, and have relentlessly pushed their workers to get back to work. And when that didn't work at first, they decided, let's go after the children and send the children back to school. Oh, they would love to send the children to work. Don't get me wrong. In fact, there are places, fast food places, for example, that have decided we're going to hire 14-year-olds. We're going to hire teenagers, and we're going to say, well, if the adults won't work for low wages, let's hire the children. So that happened as well during the pandemic. But no, they also wanted mainly to send the kids back to school so that they could send the parents back to work. And of course, when the kids are back in school, in a country where you don't have affordable childcare, what are you going to do? I mean, you know, kids got to, I mean, you send kids back to school, and then, you got to go back to work. So, and not only that, by the way, we don't have paid leave in this country. We don't have paid leave. But now here's Fox News. Brian Kilmeade, one of the biggest corporate stooges in the country. And I say that pretty much for all Fox News employees, Fox News hosts, I should say. They're telling you, no, ignore everything that you learned about this during the pandemic. Stop fighting against capitalism. Stop striking. Stop refusing to go back into the office. Stop having any sort of notion of class solidarity. And go back to work. Even if you get sick, even if it kills you, because we are going to find some way to force you back into that office, and back into our control. And that's what it is. And by the way, this is even more ghastly when you consider the messenger. Now, it's one thing, Dr. Fauci, saying, oh, unvaccinated people, go back to work. Or, I'm sorry, vaccinated people, go back to work, right? Well, we are vaccinated. We are more protected from the virus. That said, this is Brian Kilmeade telling his mostly unvaccinated audience, go back to work. Go back to work. By the way, Republicans are more than 3 times more likely to be unvaccinated than Democrats. They're literally killing their own audience. 60% of unvaccinated Americans identify as being Republican or Republican-leaning. That's millions of people. That's his audience that he is telling, I don't care. Get on a train. Get in a tiny little metal tube. Not full of demons, but full of virus, but full of COVID. Because I don't give a damn about you. All I give a damn about is for you to make money for capital owners. That's it. And by the way, he does this while he is not putting himself in harm's way, while he is sitting at home in his nice little cushy home studio. Hey, I have a home studio. I love it too. And I know it's safe. I know it's a safe space and it's protected from the virus. But he's telling you to go back to work and put yourself in danger. And it's also while he is vaccinated. Fox News has mandated that anybody that's in the office, and they were in the office before Omicron, they must have received at least one vaccination shot by December 27th of last year to be able to show up in person. He's vaccinated. Tucker Carlson's vaccinated. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, just about all of them. If not all of them. Candace Owens, definitely. All vaccinated. All vaccinated. They want their viewers ultimately to play with their own lives so that their patrons, the rich, the owner donors, can keep making money again. As if, of course, they ever stopped making money during the pandemic. In fact, they're richer than ever. Richer than ever. But they want you to be distracted from organizing against them to demand higher wages, better benefits, and fairer working conditions. And that's just a fact. It's gross that Kilmeade is out there saying this, and incredibly dangerous and disgusting. Fox guests appear on set from a studio van. Not surprising. Not surprising. All right. All right. I want the demons for 500. You want the demons in the metal tube? A tube full of demons? You remember the where that comes from? I think that was Kenneth Copeland. Tube full of demons. That's what it is. All right. Oh, Nomiki knows that Fox guests appear on a set from a studio van. Oh yeah, because what does she? She go on. She goes in fights with Dan Bongino a lot, doesn't she? I don't know. I think she does. I think she does. Pretty awesome. All right. That's why you needed a private jet. Thank you. Yellen N, you get it. You get it. Private jet. To avoid the tube full of demons. You know those are just other passengers, right? Like calling regular people demons. All right. Fun times. Let's move on here. Let's go to Jenny. Jenna Ryan, the rioter that's famously too white and too blonde to go to prison, has reported to prison. I think we already knew that for a while, but just days, however, beginning her 60-day prison sentence for parading and picketing outside of a federal building, she decided to complain about persecution. Persecution. Fun. Now, Ryan spoke to NBC News a couple of days before she reported to prison, and she said that while she regretted her decision to go to the Capitol, she then decides to complain about her experience and liken herself to the Holocaust, to a Holocaust victim. Because of course. What is it with that analogy that makes it so that right-wingers cannot help but compare minor inconveniences and relatively minor punishments? Again, 60 days in jail. Wow. Wow, the horrible. Oh my God. Why? What is it that compels them to compare that to the worst humanitarian disaster, and I believe in human history? Oh, right. I know the answer. It's because she's never been held accountable for anything in her entire life. Ever. And by the way, it is just that. It is that attitude. That is the reason that she has been made an example of. Now, she tweeted, famous tweet, "Sorry, I have blonde hair, white skin, and a great job, and a great future, and I'm not going to go to jail. Sorry to raid on your hater parade. I did nothing wrong." Except the whole participating in the attempt to nullify the results of a legal election. Sure. But you were, to be fair, she didn't actually break anything or fight any cops or anything like that. But she was there. All right. Now, here's what she told NBC News. So I'm just going to kind of break this down piece by piece. She says, "They have no idea who I am as a person, what my beliefs are, what I've been through, who I am. They see me as a one-dimensional caricature. They don't see me as a human." And there I was, just making her point for her. In a way. All right, so now she adds, "That is the epitome of a scapegoat." Who's they? Oh, I mean, I guess they could apply to the public, the prosecutors, the people that report on it, myself included. Okay, fair enough, sure. But here's the thing. None of that stuff is relevant if you've committed a crime and then bragged about committing said crime on social media, which, by the way, actually does illustrate the kind of person you are. What you are is a Karen. Is a Karen that is full of white privilege. That's part of what being a Karen is. It is somebody who has this kind of privilege, this white privilege. And so now here's the thing about that, okay? Just imagine for a second, if there was someone else who had done a crime. And there's plenty of examples, right? But that person happened to not be white, who happened to be black. Now, do you think that she would make the same argument in a similar position if instead of being white, that person was, as I said, black? You think she'd make that argument or buy that argument from someone else? Oh no, they're scapegoating you because they don't know who you are as a person. If they only knew who you were as a person, then they wouldn't be treating you so horribly. No, it wouldn't have happened at all. Of course she wouldn't have treated that person in the way that she wants to be treated, because they don't do that. Again, an example here is how the right wing treats refugees and immigrants, asylum seekers who cross the border. Now, that said, seeking asylum is actually 100% legal, but you can look at all the right wingers that were saying some of the most horrible things about refugees. And of course, what if you actually did cross the border without being a refugee illegally? Well, of course, you know the answer that they would give. Oh, put them in prison. Kick them out. Yeah, I don't care who they are. They're here to steal our jobs, do crime. Then you go around doing the raping. Somebody's doing the raping. Well, that's how they treat other people. But when it happens to be them, well, now those characteristics matter to them. And by the way, you can even, apply this to unarmed black men who were shot by police. I remember they would go through their past and actually pick out some of the negative things or things that were negative about them. Oh, you had a history. We knew who they are. Obviously, they were no angel. They were no angel. In fact, when they couldn't find a whole lot on Ahmaud Arbery, the prosecutor decided that she was just going to describe his long, dirty toenails to try to excuse and to get the people off who shot him to death. And so, to them, apparently their humanity only matters if they're white. Let's be real about this. Let's be real. Now, she's going to continue, she says, after she's been scapegoated, quote, just like they did that to the Jews in Germany, those were scapegoats. And I believe that people who are Caucasian are being turned into evil in front of the media. When pressed on that comparison, she chose not to go further and just added, you know what's so sad? That I'm afraid to answer your question because I will be attacked for saying that. Well, because it's obviously false. This is feeding into the white replacement stuff, white victimhood. And I can assure you, as a white male who is in his, middle age, that I do not feel victimized at all. I know that I'm actually doing quite well. I am sitting pretty. That didn't. By the way, white privilege doesn't mean that if you're white, you're automatically in a good position like I am. No. White people, go through economic hardship and all sorts of hardships in their lives, addiction issues. A lot of white people are being absolutely crushed by the same system that is also crushing black people. They just so happen to crush black people even more. That are being even, more harmed in a detrimental way by the way the system is structured to really benefit capital and to benefit the wealthy. And so, yes, that doesn't mean, white privilege doesn't mean that you don't have struggles or don't have problems. Absolutely. It just means the source of your problems isn't your skin color. And so, no, what she's saying, not correct at all. No, she's not being scapegoated. She's not a victim because she's a Caucasian, that she's a white. And by the way, who really uses Caucasian anyway? I don't. I don't know. It feels like a white nationalist or white supremacist trigger word. I think that's what that seems like. But again, no, not a victim. And this is the caucasity of the situation. She thinks she is a victim for simply getting some jail time and thinks that that 60 days in jail is equivalent to what happened to Jewish people in the Holocaust. Now, I'm going to hazard a guess that she probably either doesn't know what that entailed. And you know what happened during that time? Not just 6 million Jews that were murdered, but you also had the Roma, you had leftists, you had communists, you had LGBTQ+, you had the professors, you had academics, you had scientists, you had members of the press. Remember, they would call them Lügenpresse, or the lying press. They were all put into those camps and murdered by Nazis. That's what happened. Now, if you look at the list of those people, what I just rattled off, those were the people that went into the camps. Now, that doesn't seem to sound like people that Jenna Ryan tends to hang around with. I mean, for as far as I know, that doesn't sound like any of the MAGA people. That doesn't sound like Trump supporters or MAGA rioters. Does it? Does it? I mean, you might even suspect, based on what we know, and again, I don't know her for sure, but you would suspect that based from her ideology, she might have a negative opinion of some of those people, specifically communists, academics, maybe even LGBTQ people. I don't know for sure, but leftists probably, certainly. And so maybe, because we've seen from that side, those people get blamed for the country by the right wing for the country being off track. Now, if that is indeed the case, then it seems like she would have way less in common with the victims of the Holocaust that she tries to compare herself to, and actually has way more in common with those who perpetrated the Holocaust. Now, I'm not saying that she herself is on the level of the Nazi Party of Germany, or that she has done anything anywhere close to the Holocaust. No, that would be crazy for me to say that. I'm not even saying that Trump supporters themselves or anyone near Trump have done the equivalent of what the Nazis are doing. But the beliefs and the rhetoric espoused by the modern conservative, especially the MAGA ring, right? That group of people, the movement themselves. Well, I mean, you know, you hear the rhetoric from them, it tends to be very similar and leads down a very dark path if that line of thought is not nipped in the bud. And I'm talking about, again, fascism. I suspect that is why she is in jail right now. To kind of send a message, or at least I'd hope to think that she's there to send a message to wannabe fascists and people that have been sucked into that right-wing pipeline through massive coordinated disinformation campaigns by right-wing influencers. And that message is get out. Get out of that pipeline before it is too late. All right. One last story for y'all. We'll have some fun. Already. Good shit. Is YouTube host Sam Seder a conservative influencer? Well, according to the January 6th committee, or at least according to documents submitted by a Rudy Giuliani associate, Sam Seder and the Majority Report are conservative influencers. Oh no. Oh, no. So now, by the way, the House Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the Capitol obtained a 22-page document from Bernie Kerik. So Bernie Kerik, as I mentioned, is the Rudy Giuliani associate, and this document is titled Strategic Communications Plan. Giuliani Presidential Legal Defense Team, which described a 10-day effort to pressure Republicans to overturn the election in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. So now if they were successful, of course, that would hand the presidency over to Donald Trump. So that really was the coup. It wasn't necessarily the January 6th Capitol rioters, which did play a role, of course, in that, but the real coup attempt was them to try to blanket the airwaves with conservative propaganda in order to try to convince Republicans in those states to recall electors on the basis of voter fraud, which hasn't been proven. It actually has been debunked and disproven in about 100 different ways. But to try to have them recall those electors and choose electors that would then have the Electoral College go for Donald Trump. And so, all right, now the name given to this plan, or at least a plan similar to this, I covered in another show. And it was really exposed in Peter Navarro's memoir. He wrote it himself. He admitted it himself. He and Steve Bannon worked together to do a similar plan, which would actually, which really depended on Mike Pence. So the vice president and his ceremonial role in certifying the election. So basically, he was quarterback in this analogy, and they called it the Green Bay Sweep. And so this Green Bay Sweep was supposed to basically allow for 24 hours of nonstop conservative propaganda being broadcast all over the airwaves while there were recounts and while there was maximum pressure put on Republicans in states to recall their electors and, again, choose electors that would vote for Donald Trump and make him president. So now this plan was more of a 10-day plan. So this 10-day plan didn't involve Mike Pence, but involved, and also didn't involve mainstream media coverage as well. It actually involved independent conservative media coverage. So now the document discussed talking points, daily talking points and pre-written tweets, which were supposed to be spread out by some of these very big conservative influencers, people like Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro, and Sam Seder? Wait, Sam Seder? No, I've got an image here of the document itself. Big names: Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk, Hodge twins. You know the Hodge twins, right? Yeah. Officer Tatum. I don't know who that is. Ben Shapiro, of course. Benny Shaps. Ben Shapiro. PragerU. Dave Rubin with his very, very big ideas that put his brain into recovery mode. Oh, look, he was supposed to spread conservative propaganda. I thought he was supposed to be a classical liberal. Classical liberal. Daily Wire, which again, that's just Ben Shapiro's general outlet. Students for Trump, Ryan Fournier, that sounds very foreign name. He's very suspicious at all. Very suspicious. But under that, here you have number 10, the Majority Report with Sam Seder. Oh my God. Right above, Steven Crowder. Oh no! Steven! It's Sam Seder! Oh no! Sam Seder. Now, what's interesting, and there is, of course, Mark Levin. The guy who I imagine is Master Shake. I don't know. That's just the way that I see him. I see a talking shake. But look at Steven Crowder, 11. Does that mean that Sam Seder is more of an influencer, has a bigger influence than Steven Crowder. That is hilarious. Now, of course, Sam Seder is not a right-winger. Obviously. If you've seen any of Sam Seder's content, you know he's not a conservative. And so, but he does dunk on conservatives and debate conservatives quite a bit. So that might be one of the reasons. Now, it's funny because a lot of people reached out to him. One of them was Ross Story. Here's what he told them. He said, "I would imagine it's a function of the utter incompetence which was on display throughout the Trump presidency. That also seems possible because the Majority Report consistently challenges conservatives on their own turf. We have made inroads with their audiences, but incompetence is probably the best explanation. That, and I am generally more influential than Steven Crowder." That's awesome. I just love that dig at Steven. I love it. Oh, it's so good. And by the way, after Ethan Klein from H3H3 basically set it up where Sam Seder was going to debate Steven Crowder, and it popped in essentially because Sam has, or I should say Steven has cold feet Crowder, and would run away from debating Sam Seder. That got a lot of interest online. There were a lot of searches for Sam Seder Majority Report, and that video was viewed probably millions of times. And so that might have something to do with it, actually. Now the people, of course, that put it together, and Sam actually addressed it on a show, they probably just had no idea. They're not online, and so they just look at what conservatives are watching or had watched previously in the past. And again, Steven Crowder and that whole debate thing. And so, that's probably why he was put on the list. I mean, it's very, very likely. But that said, I want to show you Sam's reaction on this because it's fantastic.
Number 10 is the Majority Report.
Sam Seder.
Sam Seder. Wait, what? What the frick is this? This has been submitted to the January 6th committee. I guess it's time I come clean, folks. It doesn't say these are conservatives who are influential. It says conservative influencers.
Mm.
And so maybe there's some data out there that shows that we impact the conservative YouTube sphere in some way. I have no idea.
Right. That would make sense.
It wouldn't make sense.
Well, it shows, but like when people...
Some reasonable explanation for how we ended up on that list. I mean, they clearly don't know that, like, we're not a conservative show. I don't think anybody would say that.
No, but it shows up when Data and Society does like this right-wing influence maps of like YouTube, like Destiny and something will show up because he debates them all the time. Right. It shows up on the computer, on the algorithm type of thing. And that's probably why we do too, because we have so much like Bongino and Candace Owens content.
Right. Maybe that's it, which certainly validates our reason for doing. But I mean, what about Crowder?
Oh, I wouldn't worry about Steven Crowder. He is probably just off having a nightmare again about Sam Seder, like he had before. So, no. Again, this is hilarious because it is so preposterous to see Sam Seder on the list of conservative influencers. Again, he does what I do, or I should say, I guess I do what he does, and push back against the people that are actually mentioned on that list. And he's got an enormous platform to do it. And, maybe not as large as Steven Crowder, but apparently way more influential. fun. That's just a fun story. All right. Anyway. That's it. That's all I got. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you for the likes and shares. Danko Bengal asks, those semen demons in the metal sky tube. Yeah, that would be the one. Let's see. Also notes to the January 6th committee to subpoena Hannity within the week. That would be interesting to see his reaction to it and how he will try to get out of it. Come on. Come on. Jonathan Letter says, we love the short sleeve shirt. Would I unbutton my top button? But my top's already unbuttoned. Oh, what do you want? Like, do you want me to free the nipple? Is that what we're talking about? Do you want me to get banned from YouTube for freeing the nip? To have a nip slip on air? What's going on? Look, I do have to admit, I have been, I've been losing some weight, and so I'm feeling looking, I'm looking good. I'm feeling good. So hey, maybe, maybe a nip slip one of these days. I don't know. All right, everybody. Show some skin for the ratings. Is there insanity? There's no insanity in this control room. Let me tell you what. There's no stripping or gambling in this establishment. Not today. Not today. All right. Anyway, let's figure out who to raid, huh? Let's see. By the way, we're trying to get 100 subs on Twitch. So if you're on Twitch, if you're watching, and if you haven't subbed yet, what are you doing? Sub. Help us out. Help us out. Really appreciate it if you would. Let's see. Let's raid too. Let's raid into. We haven't raided into anybody yet in the new year, so why don't we go and do a surf raid? Who, by the way, is actually talking about the Seder story right now, apparently. So let's do that. Again, super fun. Bet you want those. God damn it, right? God damn, I want those subs. Yeah, you're right. I do want Sam's. I do want subs. Sorry. I got confused because I was reading a comment about Sam Seder. Damn ADHD. Let me tell you what. All right, anyway. We'll see you all tomorrow. You have a fantastic day today. And hopefully, Jeff wants it. Well, it's not like he's not looking good. The beard. Beard's good. No. All right, anyway. I'm going to start all sorts of weird rumors now, but that's okay. It's all in fun. All right, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night. Love you all. And remember, change begins with you. We'll see you tomorrow. You weirdos. We're supposed to get the bonk stick out, okay? That's what's going to happen here. Next time, you get the bonk stick.
There's insanity in the control room.
Big massive dump.
There's some wars in this town. Wet ass keyword. I like my meat tight. I like my meat tight.
Please clap. They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door.